when we came on the air yesterday, there was a poll showing that she was struggling when it came to younger voters, which is one of the areas in which she's supposed to be helping right the ship, but she hadn't. In fact, Trump had some 19-point swing from being underwater with younger voters in 2020 to being above Joe Biden by 2 points in younger voters, and then was above Kamala Harris, according to the latest polling, which only included 1 day post his withdrawal. But still, Trump was over her 17 points. Now we get the Reuters Ipsos poll. This is registered voters, and it was conducted Monday through Tuesday. So all post his dropout and endorsement of her. Head to head, it shows Harris ahead of Trump by 2 points. The last poll they did was mid-July, showed Harris in a hypothetical at that point, 44 to 40 to Trump's 44. So it was a tie. She's gone up 2. And in a three-way race, currently, it's showing Harris up 4 points. She's at 42, Trump's at 38, RFK Jr.'s at 8. So, Tom, I'll start with you. What do you make of the Harris favorability numbers here, or at least polling numbers here in this Reuters Ipsos poll?
Yeah, there was another poll out this morning, the NPR Marist poll, which had Trump up 1 point. Look, I think it's clear that she has energized Democrats, and numbers have gone up among African Americans, particularly women, Hispanic voters as well in the early going. But to your point, not among young voters. She has in the Quinnipiac poll that was released a couple days ago, she was at underwater 14 points among independents, which is exactly where Joe Biden was. And we're also seeing that Harris is not doing as well among white voters. And so I think, look, it's going to take some time for this to kind of settle in and sort itself out. But and some of this may be just a temporary, bump for her enthusiasm wise. She does seem to be. When Biden dropped out, he was trailing Trump in our Real Clear Politics national average two-way race by 3 points. And right now she's at 1 point. She's trailing Trump by 1.6. So a little bit of an upgrade there, but we'll see how long that lasts and where things settle. And we're still waiting for, data in these key battleground states.
Okay, but the thing is, Carl, even Trump's longtime pollster, Tony Fabrizio, they've leaked, obviously, an internal campaign memo saying expect the Harris honeymoon that they expect to see in the coming days as the mainstream media goes wall to wall, coronating her, as I said in the intro, redefining her, lifting her, celebrating her, and they see it coming too. They know it's going to come, and then they say, but the honeymoon will end as soon as her record comes out. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that's right. The Democrats almost had like a little convention in terms of the press coverage they were getting right after the Republican convention before we could measure whether there was a bounce out of Milwaukee for the Republicans. Joe Biden's, announced he's not running. Kamala Harris is coronated. And then, you, as you said, Megyn, all this loving coverage. It wasn't the first time, when she ran 4 years ago, she got, I'd never seen news coverage like that. And the campaign was mismanaged. And as you know, she didn't even make it to the, starting gate in Iowa, let alone the finish line at the convention. But this has started again. But the other thing is, if you think about it, they're sort, despite this revisionist history that Joe Biden is the greatest president since George Washington or Lincoln, that the Democrats are saying, and that there were 4 groups of people. This guy, Biden, very low numbers for reelection, 40% job approval rating. So there were these 4 groups of Americans that didn't like the Biden administration. The first group is conservatives and Republicans and Trump supporters who just wouldn't like a Democratic president. The second group was people who were offended, swing voters mostly, independents. Joe Biden campaigned to be a unifying, figure, and instead he was very hyper-partisan, very divisive as president. And the third group of people are swing voters and independents who just thought their record on issues like immigration and inflation was abysmal. But there's a fourth group, and that group was. And those 3 groups are all going to still be critical of Kamala Harris. But there's a fourth group of voters who just thought Joe Biden was too old. And that's the answer. Harris is the answer to that question. And so I think a bump up on that issue alone, you got this guy out. He was too old to run. He's out. People were looking for who wanted to vote Democrat but couldn't support this guy, they can now go to Kamala Harris.
You know, Andrew, the numbers in terms of fundraising that they've pulled in over the past couple of days are pretty staggering. It was, as of yesterday, something like 81 million in donations to Harris. Now I saw the latest figure was up over 126 million, and just saw a report online that some 896,000 of those are from donors who had not donated anything yet this cycle. All of that is very good news for what had been a limping Democratic Party, but it doesn't change, the fundamentals of the race, the policies that the Biden-Harris administration put in place versus the policies that the Trump administration put in place. And let's face it, while the Republicans now are falling more in love with Trump, his problematic behavior in the eyes of the Democrats is never going to change, nor are these Republicans ever going to warm up to her. She's not been some, stallion in the wings that the Republicans were looking at as like, I could meander over. No. So what do you make of the influx of money, and how much should we be gleaning from that, given those dynamics?
Well, I always think the money, especially from small donors, is important. Would point out I'm waiting for Elon Musk to put up the matching grant on his side. I mean, Carl always points out money is the mother's milk of politics. There's a lot of money this time around, so I don't put too much in the donation numbers that are reported, because they seem to go up no matter what happens on both sides. I think that the memo from the
Fabrizio.
Trump campaign, Tony's memo that you mentioned, and as a matter of fact, you can read that. That's on the site this morning. It's on Real Clear Politics. Is kind of revealing as to how they are going to approach it. Here, I'll just read you part of it. They said the Democrats deposing one nominee for another does not change voters' discontent over the economy, inflation, crime, the open border, housing costs, not to mention concern over 2 foreign wars. Before long, Harris's honeymoon will end, and voters will refocus on her role as Biden's partner and co-pilot. I think that's how they're going to run the race. That's how I would run it if I were them. Just tie her to the Biden record, and because we know a lot of those policies, according to our polling, the polling we see, are so unpopular: immigration, inflation, even lawfare. I think all a problem for her, and I don't see how she runs away from her role in the Biden administration, especially in this sort of foreshortened campainn.
You guys have seen she's doing it with the media's help. What borders are? Tom, you've seen this. What borders are? She wasn't the border. She didn't have anything to do with the border. It's actually pretty remarkable when you look at Axios this morning saying critics, Trump supporters are trying to say she was the border czar. She was never any such thing. And then, of course, Axios' own former reporting calling her the border czar, not to mention Joe Biden's statements on the record assigning her responsibility for the southern border have come back to bite Axios and other, Politico and other mainstream. The AP reported she was the border czar. Only now, Tom, is she magically no longer the border czar since she's become the Democratic presumptive nominee.
Yes, every position that she took in her 2020 race, which was pretty far to the left on issues like defunding the police, defunding ICE, giving healthcare to illegal immigrants, et cetera, all that stuff is now, in the memory hole. And, she's portraying herself. And I'm sure there's going to be, when they get to convention in a few weeks, it's going to be all about, Kamala Harris, the tough on crime prosecutor from the Bay Area. And, she's a real a fighter, and she can, prosecute the case against Trump. I mean, this is what the race is on right now over the next couple of weeks to define her and frame her. And obviously Republicans are putting together ads. We saw when Phil Wegman, our White House reporter, tweeted one out that he got from a political operative, this Dave McCormick ad that's running in Pennsylvania.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. And so those ads are going to be running all over the place. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is going to be running her own ads. But to your point, Megyn, she's getting a pretty good assist from the media, who are playing along with this idea that, she was never a border czar. That was never her, part of her brief. It's going to be interesting to see if any of the critical coverage of her actually breaks through.
Some Americans enjoy using their credit cards because it can be a hassle-free and secure way to pay. But our sponsor, the American Payments Coalition, says that some DC politicians want to change all that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. They say this bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, which allows them to use untested payment networks that could jeopardize your data security and rewards. They say corporate megastores will make more money and you will wind up paying the price. Find out more at guardyourcard.com and consider telling Congress to guard your card while you're there, too. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.